The tiger, iconic symbol of the wild, and an apex predator that we fear and admire. In our imaginations, they roam the jungle. But today, many tigers have never even seen the wild. The vast majority of them spend their lives in captivity. Princess is an American tiger, a distant relative of her wild ancestors. She doesn't even know how to hunt. Most tigers in America aren't found in zoos. They're privately owned. There are more than twice as many of them as the highly endangered wild tiger. This could change if new legislation is passed that would ban the private ownership and breeding of tigers. What are the issues surrounding captive tigers in America? And what does the future hold for their wild cousins? Tigers are one of the world's most popular animals. Everybody loves to see a tiger at the zoo. Even the scientists who work around them are impressed by their majesty. Ron Tilson is the senior conservation advisor at the Minnesota Zoo and a renowned expert on tigers. He spent many years tracking and studying them in the jungles of Asia.
My heart beats faster every time I see one. Yeah, there is, it's because they represent everything. They are the icon of Asian wilderness. They are the most powerful cat, the largest cat. They are, in my opinion, one of the most attractive cats. But it's also the fact that essentially we have evolved as a species with the tiger, and the tiger is one of the only animals on Earth that preys and eats people. And when a tiger looks at a human being, I think the tiger sees us for exactly what we are. We are nothing more than a piece of meat.
The tiger and the power it represents has always fascinated us. At the beginning of the 20th century, there were 100,000 tigers in the forests of Asia. The first tigers came to America as entertainers. Before zoos and circuses attempted to control their breeding, surplus animals found their way into private hands. Soon, everyone from the rich and famous to companies and sports teams wanted a piece of the big cat. For some Americans, like the character of Tony Montana in the movie Scarface, owning a tiger became a symbol of success. Martin Dins is a celebrity veterinarian and was one of the first to specialize in exotic animals. His talent and reputation led him to work for A-list stars like Michael Jackson and the magicians Siegfried and Roy. He witnessed firsthand the rise of the tiger population in America.
The tiger pet phenomenon became a trend, I would say, in the early 60s. We could be driving in Beverly Hills and see a person driving a convertible with a tiger sitting up in the back seat. Or people owning a Jaguar, a big Jaguar, driving around in their Jaguar with it. There were no import restrictions. There were no restrictions on the sale out of a pet shop of these kind of animals. You know, a little tiger cub is nice and cute, so people thought it would be fashionable. It was unique. They could show it off, and it was trendy then.
The pet tiger phenomenon may have existed briefly in other parts of the world, but it never had the dimensions it's taken on in America. In the 1970s, actress Tippi Hedren, the star of Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, embarked on an unusual film project. She starred in the movie Roar, where actors and crew members rubbed shoulders with dozens of lions and tigers.
I can't believe we did all that we were foolish enough to do it. So many of us were hurt. You know, that it was, insanity. It was truly insane here.
Tippi Hedren radically changed. She converted the Roar movie set into the Shambhala Preserve, a sanctuary for abused and neglected big cats. Her strong stance against private ownership has drawn attention to the issues facing captive and wild big cats. In the wild, tigers are threatened by habitat destruction and human encroachment. They've been hunted and poached for their skins. Most of all, they suffered from the illegal trade of their parts for use in traditional medicine. 97% of the species have been wiped out over the last 100 years. And with only 3,200 wild tigers left, they are facing a total crisis.
Well, just about everything has been tried, and just about everything has failed. Everyone is trying to think through how to go about making a future for tigers, and the bottom line is that we've failed in every example. There is no one place you can put your finger and say, aha, here's the magic formula on how to save tigers.
Tigers have been on the endangered species list since it was established. In 1973, it became illegal to import tigers born in the wild. So the tigers living in the United States today are American, born and raised. The population of captive tigers has been steadily growing. In the wild, a female spends a couple of years teaching her 3 or 4 cubs how to hunt and fend for themselves. But in captivity, she can breed every year. Today, most American tigers are privately owned, and some people still keep them as pets. Susanna Kukol and Scott Shoemaker live in the small town of Pahrump, Nevada, with their 6 tigers.
Hi, baby. I know. Mama's girl, huh?
If your definition of pet is something you throw food at and it's nice and docile, okay, then that's not a tiger.
That's my girl. That's my girl. Oh, that's my girl. In the cage, it's just fun. Outside, that's when it's like, okay, we are going for the walk, we are gonna go for the training. So outside is like you are in school. In the cage, it's, okay, it's their place, it's their home. Oh, somebody's being cute. So basically, that's the golden rule. You don't push them into any serious training in the cage, and you never ever turn the back on a tiger.
But not all captive tigers are pets or collector's items. Some private owners see themselves as conservationists and believe America is the tiger's Noah's Ark. Patty Perry runs her own Center for Conservation and Education in Southern California. She is also the vice president of the Feline Conservation Federation, the largest organization promoting private ownership and breeding of captive exotic cats in the United States.
It's far from perfect, but in our world today, we have to have captive breeders, private captive breeders. We have to have private educators, because the zoos can't do it all. You don't get that kind of contact and that kind of one-on-one at a zoo. They have been poached, they have been hunted for their pelts and for their internal organs, and we have very, very low populations. This is Prana, the standard. The snow white is Vishnu. This is my little red-headed stepchild, and this is the one, the golden tabby. He's gonna be our biggest tiger here. The tigers is very much an emotional bond. They respond emotionally. I got them all as babies, so I bottle raised them. So there is that connection. You know, they identify me as, you know, mom with the milk. Who wants to feed a tiger? I kind of start on this end and give you guys a chance. I want you to hold the stick. Just hold the stick and put it right through there. Want to have a bite? Okay. Who's next? These cats being 6 generations, right, you know, captive bred, and their, you know, their primary contact being human beings are not going to be the same as a cat that's in the wild. It's a completely different animal. But will they ever be domesticated? No. They're wild animals.
The wild nature of tigers is seen even among those in captivity. In 2003, famous Las Vegas entertainer Roy Horn was mauled during a performance by one of his beloved tigers.
The tiger just grabs him, like, looks to be right around here in this area, grabs him, like, just locks on him, picks him up, and just drags him.
We just heard all this commotion behind the curtain, and you could hear.
It reminded everyone that even trained tigers are unpredictable and dangerous.
For 40 years, those guys did 2 to 3 shows a day. In the beginning, 7 days a week. That's a lot of exposure to a tiger. If you fall down in front of one of these big cats, and especially with tigers, they're gonna carry you off, regardless of what your relationship is with them.
He's got a thing for me, Patty.
I know, he does.
In my career as a zoological veterinarian, I've worked the gamut of facilities and owners that have tigers. There's the zoos, there's the circuses, there's the private collectors. And years ago, there were a lot more of the illicit owners of these animals. But I've worked for all of them, and I don't discriminate. I have done the best I can to discourage breeding by unqualified individuals. But I took an oath, and is it my business to say, no, I'm not going to treat this tiger because you own it privately? That's on the other side of medicine for me.
Lisa Ann Takansnick is an attorney in Washington, D.C. Her organization, the Wildcat Conservation Legal Aid Society, is trying to determine the exact number of privately owned tigers.
Hey, I'm calling to follow up with you on the tiger research. You were going to finalize some of the numbers for which state are you still working on? What are we looking at? Alabama?
The actual number of tigers in the United States is still a matter of speculation. But the enforcement of laws already in place is problematic. Legislation varies from state to state. At the federal level, the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Interior both enforce different laws affecting tigers. There is no single government body responsible for tiger welfare.
Well, we don't really know how many tigers are held captive in the United States. It's a very good question because estimates tend to go all over. Some say there's 5,000 cats in captivity, tigers. Some say there's up to 10. The problem with the numbering system is that the 2 federal agencies that are there to enforce our Endangered Species Act and the Animal Welfare Act don't know how many tigers are out there, which is very troubling because we need to get a handle on the number of cats.
As hard as it is to imagine, big cats can be found everywhere, even on the 5th floor of an apartment building in the heart of New York City, like on an October day in 2003.
This police video shows Ming, a full-grown 325-pound tiger, left home alone by its owner in Unit 5E of a Harlem apartment building.
If the number and the location of big cats is a source for concern, a larger concern might just be the irresponsible owners. Screening for them remains difficult. In 2005, near the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in Moore Park, a stunning example of human-tiger conflict occurred.
I saw a tiger right there, just real slow, huge. He was about this high up to the fence.
Newly retired George Gross was the incident commander at the California Fish and Game Department. For more than 3 weeks, he chased a tiger on the loose in a residential area. He got no help from the cat's owner, and on a February morning, he had a difficult decision to make.
Basically, this was like a city living in fear for a month because somewhere there was this large tiger running around in their neighborhood. We didn't see it for quite a while, but we knew it was in here. So when it climbed out, it was like it came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, everybody could see it, and it started walking around quite slowly through the grass. You know, I was within 150 yards of it. First thing I thought was like, what a majestic animal. This thing's beautiful. But then, you know, I came back in, it's like, but I have this job to do too. So it started walking towards me, and then it started going up a trail. I sat there and said, I can't have it up here on the soccer field, baseball field, and our opportunity to take a shot really diminishes. So that's when I gave the order for people with rifles to, if they had a clean shot, to take the shot.
The male tiger weighing as much as 600 pounds was taken from the hills near the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library by wildlife officials who say they had no choice but to kill it.
I've always felt that I unfortunately made the right decision, and, you know, to be honest, is the first thing I did was pat him and say I was sorry, because I knew I didn't want to kill him.
George Gross was not the last law enforcement agent faced with such a decision. There was an even more dramatic incident on October 18, 2011, when there was a massive release of wild animals in Zanesville, Ohio. The owner of a private zoo threw open the gates of his facility before committing suicide. This time, it wasn't one tiger, but 18 on the loose. They were all killed by the authorities along with lions, bears, and monkeys.
It probably will come to another tragedy before certain laws are either enforced like they should be, or new laws are going to have to be implemented. To have multiple situations happen because we're not moving on these issues is very tragic, and it's very sad, not only for the individuals, but the cats that are involved, because most of the time those cats are shot on site. I'd rather see us be in a proactive mode versus a reactive mode.
Is it time to ban the private ownership of tigers and other exotic animals? "26 states banned the private ownership of tigers, but in many states, it's still legal to own and breed them if you have a permit. Stories of tiger cubs sold at swap meets or on the internet are galvanizing the movement to ban private ownership of big cats. And in Washington, a political and legal battle is underway.
People can't believe that these animals are still being born to be sold as pets. And you can get them for any amount of money if you're foolish enough to pay. And when you see those little cubs, they're cute. But by the time they're 7 months old, they are tearing up your house and taking a pretty good chunk out of you, because they don't have a 400-pound mom to say, knock it off, nor do they have any siblings with whom to play. So you become the sibling, and they're tough. Because you're dealing with an apex predator. They are top of the food chain, one of 4 of the most dangerous animals in the world. And yet our government says that's okay, and they will even give a permit to have these apex killers in somebody's backyard. It's very wrong.
Tippi Hedren decided that something needed to be done and contacted her congressman. She successfully proposed a new law to prevent taking big cats across state lines, but this was just the beginning.
So I took a bill to Washington in 2003. It was simply to stop these animals moving from one state to another. And it took 2 years. It was called, titled the Captive Wildlife Safety Act. It was sort of a precursor to the bill that I am ultimately, my goal is to have a bill that will stop the breeding of all of these animals to be sold as a pet or for financial gain.
Tippi Hedren isn't alone in her quest to end the private ownership and breeding of tigers. Conservation organizations fear that the captive population of American tigers could contribute to the lucrative global trade in tiger parts for traditional medicines. For now, tiger farms in China and poaching are the main source of parts.
To have a state law, and we have 50 states, banning breeding of tigers in captivity would be too problematic. And it's easier to make it a federal regulation. Then we don't have 50 different laws that could have as many different exemptions, so it's easier to do it at the federal level. The private ban is really focused on going after the individuals or these backyard breeders that are sort of out of the radar.
Many private owners who have all their permits believe they have every right to keep tigers.
Well, the possibility of a federal ban would be a nightmare. There are more and more and more restrictions all the time. All the time. More and more regulations and more restrictions. You have to, again, you have to be organized. You have to have lobbyists. You have to present your side of it to the right people. It's a political thing. It's a money thing.
The organizations pushing for the ban are also concerned about tiger welfare. Even federal agencies have set very low standards of care. A 3-by-3 meter cage is the minimum requirement. Tammy Tees manages the Wildcat Sanctuary in Minnesota. She has heard countless stories of abused animals and careless owners.
Most of the animals, including the tigers at the sanctuary, come from people who think a tiger would make a good pet. We hear all the stories. It got aggressive. It turned on me. I can't find vet care. I lost my homeowner's insurance. You know, I didn't know it'd get this big. I didn't know it'd eat this much. And we tell people a wild animal is not a pet, and it never should be kept as one. Titan behind me, that tiger was illegally owned and should have been seized under the state law. Had he been seized prior to that, his owner would still be alive today.
Stopping people from acquiring and breeding tigers motivates animal rights defenders and conservationists, but private breeders defend their practice by saying that if tigers were to go extinct in the wild, it would be better to have captive tigers than none at all. This view is highly controversial.
My question is, if you ban these animals, we can no longer keep and breed them, so they will be extinct in captivity. Now they go extinct in the wild. What have you accomplished? You killed the species.
A ban on breeding or keeping tigers has broad implications. While the United States looks to control unregulated breeding of tigers by private owners, across the world, extraordinary efforts are being made to save tigers in the wild. For Ron Tilson, zoo tigers represent a backup for the wild population. He has been the coordinator of the Tiger Species Survival Plan, designed to maintain healthy and genetically diverse tigers.
In the zoo world, we try and have what we call a hands-off management. That means let's not touch tigers, let's not play with tigers, let's consider them really quite dangerous. For the longest time, I refused to even call a tiger by a name. I'm not particularly fond of house names. To me, they're numbers. They're a stud book number, and I see a tiger more as a collection of genes. And what I'm concerned about is the future, way down the line, that these animals still maintain their tigerness.
Scientists have divided tigers into 9 subspecies. 3 of them have already gone extinct. The Bali tiger in the 1940s, the Caspian tiger in the 1970s, and the Javan tiger in the 1980s. Surviving are the Siberian or Amur tiger, the Bengal, the Indo-Chinese, the Malayan, and the Sumatran tigers. They are all endangered. And the last South China tigers can only be found in captivity.
We know every tiger in the North American zoos, and we know its lineage. We know every parent, grandparent, great-grandparent, great-great-grandparent, all the way back to its wild-caught mother and father. So we know exactly where they came from in Russia for the Amur tigers, and we know who they mated with and who their offspring. So we have these like giant family trees.
Unlike most zoos, most private owners don't know the lineage of their tigers because no one has kept track of their pedigrees.
Yeah, there you go, Elvis.
Tigers from different subspecies resemble each other, and most breeders aren't interested in keeping subspecies pure.
As for subspecies, I don't believe in them. I don't care. And some of them might have more Bengal blood in them because some of them don't actually grow the big, thick fur in winter. Some of them do, so I know they have a lot of Siberian blood with them.
The white tiger is the best example of breeding for looks. Loved for its striking appearance, it's not a subspecies, but a color morph, the result of a recessive gene that causes 1 in every 10,000 tigers to be born white. White tigers are almost non-existent in the wild, but they are often bred in captivity. This has made them highly inbred and more susceptible to health problems. And that's not the only consequence of private ownership.
People notice that many tigers in captivity might be bigger than in a wild, because in a wild you need to stay athletic to catch prey. In captivity, they get their food served basically on a silver platter. And one of the reasons many tigers in captivity are huge, they are simply fat, they are obese, not good for their liver. A lot of the stuff American tigers are fed, it's basically stuff we eat, it's from supermarket. Some of the meat might have some hormones in them. The other theory is some breeders might selectively breed for bigger size because it looks impressive on display. Huge tiger, it looks more impressive than small tiger. Might be simply because they just don't exercise as much as the ones in the wild, because any cat, even in the wild, if they don't have to move, they don't move, they sleep.
The scientific community has labeled these tigers as generic. They look like tigers, but are they really? Tigers in the wild are generally solitary and secretive, coming together during the mating season and perhaps to share a kill. In captivity, they become very sociable with both humans and other tigers. They haven't been taught how to hunt and could starve if left on their own. Has the very essence of tigerness been bred out of them?
What we do know about subspecies, legitimate subspecies, is that we know what their genetic makeup is according to molecular biology. Okay, it can be defined. And that is why the private ownership tigers, they will never contribute to the conservation of wild tigers, simply because, not because they're not a tiger, because in a sense they are a Panthera tigris. That's the Latin name for what a tiger is. But they've lost their tigerness. They've lost their tigerness, and what we mean by that is they have been inbred and crossbred to the point where no one knows what their lineages are, and everyone knows the more inbreed you have, the greater risks or susceptibility to diseases. You become less fit, and when you become less fit, your ability to survive in the wild becomes negligible. The American tiger is really a junk tiger. It is nothing more than an illusion of a tiger.
In 2005, Ron Tilson and Tammy Tees worked together to stop the breeding of tigers in Minnesota. They're concerned about the conditions in which private tigers are kept.
Sabrina is supposed to be a Sumatran Bengal mix, and she's our worst abuse case we've seen. She charged the fence nonstop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But she does have, from this up around the face and that sort of this Sumatran look to her with the really black stripe.
And she's got a lot longer.
They'd welcome a federal ban on breeding and ownership if it were to pass tomorrow.
I wouldn't want to see these animals abused. You can't do that. That I would lose sleep over. But I would certainly like to see them all neutered, and I would like to see them well taken care of until they die. Would that bother me? No, that would put me to sleep really well. We'll just simply lose a large number of worthless tigers that consume resources that should be spent on wild tigers, and that actually corrupt the message that we're doing something wonderful for tigers, when in fact we're not doing anything for tigers. Why are we spending all of this time and energy and money in trying to protect the right to own this, or even allowing it to happen, and putting people at risk? And I keep coming back to these same issues. I don't get it. I don't get why it isn't stopped.
Conservationists have been reluctant to study or give any attention to American tigers. However, with the crisis in the wild, some of the scientific community are taking a closer look at these generic tigers. Stephen O'Brien is former chief of the Laboratory of Genomic Diversity at the National Cancer Institute. He's an authority on big cat genetics and evolutionary biology. But his work has sparked controversy in the conservation world.
Is there a value in the admixture in tigers? That is, tigers that have an ancestry that includes interbreeding between different subspecies. Of course there's a value in it. It's still a tiger. Most of the tigers in captivity are considered by my friends and colleagues to be junk because they're hybrids between different subspecies. And many of them are, but I wasn't sure how many.
Stephen O'Brien's team has recently designed a method to determine the genetic makeup of big cats.
So we used this DNA fingerprint technology that was developed to identify the difference between subspecies of tigers. And I said, if you take one of these tigers that we don't know, is it really a hybrid? Well, what we found was that many of them are indeed pure subspecies. They were either Bengal, or they were Amur, or they were Sumatran, or one of the living subspecies. I think the captive population should not be discounted.
Good. Nice. The reassessment of these generic tigers has led to another exciting discovery. Not only are some of them purebred subspecies, they also have a rich genetic diversity, as rich as in the wild population. Since their ancestors were taken from the wild when tigers were thriving, some captive tigers have retained many characteristics, perhaps now lost in wild tigers. Tiger conservationists have been quick to point out that the sample studied by Stephen O'Brien did not include a significant number of backyard-bred tigers. Still, he believes that each tiger counts.
My personal feeling about it is we're backing up a tiger population in the wild that is not doing very well. And to tell you the truth, I'd rather have the animal alive in a few hundred years than simply lose it by exterminating all the captive animals, which is, one solution. Maybe that's not a reasonable thing. I realize not everybody agrees with that, but I really think that, when evolution creates a species as magnificent as the tiger, it only does it once, and if you lose it, it's not going to come back.
It seems that some captive tigers could play a role in the survival of the species. But what about privately owned American tigers? Will they be around long enough to be part of the solution? The wild tiger population was almost 10,000 in 1990. 20 years later, there are only about 3,000 animals left, and they are vanishing faster than ever.
When I first moved into this office 25 years ago, I had this big concrete wall and I wondered what I wanted to put on it. And it came to me, why don't I have the covers of magazines that are focusing on tiger issues? It starts back here, The New Scientist. Does the tiger have a future? That's what we're talking about right now. Too Late for Tigers in Wildlife Conservation magazine. Doomed, cover of Time magazine. The Last Tigers. Initially, I thought they were very interesting because it gave me a focus. But what happened was that this message just became such a common message. It's a little bit like the sky is falling down, the sky is falling down, and after a while, no one hears you calling.
World leaders seem to be finally waking up to the dire future facing wild tigers. In November 2010, an international summit was held in St. Petersburg. The goal was to develop a strategy to save the wild tiger from extinction. Heads of state from the 13 tiger range countries set a target to double the population by 2022 and committed over 230 million euros. But is that enough? The threats facing the Asian big cat are many and serious. In August 2011, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service announced that it wanted to reinstate a permitting process to control the breeding of generic tigers. This would severely reduce the number of tigers bred in captivity. But for the proponents of a total ban on private ownership, things aren't moving fast enough on Capitol Hill. Along with private owners, the entertainment industry is lobbying to slow down the legislative process.
I am very annoyed that this bill is in the status that it is. It's just up in the air right now because we can't, I am not going to buckle and say it's okay to breed these animals. It's a huge problem.
Come on, Ace. Yeah, she's a little fat. She's getting old.
You gotta maybe try the 5.
But tigers have created jobs and income. They appear in movies. They are still popular in circuses. And there's even an industry that's created a special diet for them. In these days of economic turmoil, a ban that would cost American jobs isn't easy for a politician to support.
To be honest, I really don't know what the federal ban will do because like so many of the federal regulations and the state laws, there's going to be exemptions carved out of a federal ban on breeding tigers and other big cats. So the circus industry could be exempt, entertainment could be exempt. It'll be a very long process because there's a lot of money involved.
From the professional's standpoint, it's a sensitive issue because they're being regulated out of the business. And, well, from the owner's standpoint, it's a sensitive issue because they're attached to the animal. And they're emotional about it.
Only recently, American tigers have come under scientific and legal scrutiny, and their fate raises many questions. But if the wild population is to double, animals bred in captivity will be required for the complex process of reintroduction. Even though conservationists have every reason to be pessimistic about the future of the tiger, there is still some hope.
We're on the cusp of a new revolution in tiger conservation, and that is looking at reintroduction of captive individuals back into spaces where they once lived. The big issue is, can captive tigers actually go out and live and survive on their own in the wilderness areas? The honest answer to that is, don't know. There's some who say no, they have to be taught how to do this, and they learn from their mothers, and the mother can't teach them if there aren't natural prey. But in fact, all of these are little roadblocks. All of these can be taken care of and surmounted.
Captive bred lions and cheetahs have been introduced into the wild in South Africa. This has encouraged Chinese officials. Today, South China tigers are being prepared in Africa for their reintroduction in China. Each generation will be released into a larger and wilder setting. They will learn how to hunt, teach their skills to their offspring, while having less and less contact with humans. But preparing tigers for their release is only half of the challenge. Experts know that wild tigers need space, and 250-kilo predators also need prey. Preserving the ecosystems of tiger range countries is as crucial as preserving the tigers themselves. That's why there are...
They eat the bone. Oh, that would have been awesome.
So they can play. We'll get them outside.
Go out the door.
Hey, come on, Maddie. Go ahead and get a piece of food load up. Oh, who's gonna get it?
Don't fight.
Now listen for the bones crunch on this one.
Good girl.
Go ahead and load one up for Nikki. Who's next?
This would be a fun job.
Madison is 3. Nikki is 15. Nikki's Madison's mom. Here, pay attention, Nikki. Nikki. Oop. There you go. Crunch, crunch, swallow.
Crunch, yeah.
They'll eat this like popcorn. Okay, now we'll go ahead and load up another piece for Nikki. Come here, Nikki. Here you go, Nikki. Nikki, pay attention. Here you go. Push, push. There you go. Good girl. Good girl. And next for Nikki.
I'm trying to take a picture, so go ahead. I can't get...
You were famous right away. Oh, I know. And we were kind of concerned about how they would handle the cold temperatures. So actually, these two have radiant heating systems built into the floor. We can thermostatically control the temperature of these. They're actually septic tanks that we repurposed. That got donated from us, or to us by a company in Springfield. We have a lid we'll put on it, and then we cover the front, so they keep nice and warm in the winter time. But these two handled the winter exceptionally well, and so did Merlin, actually. He was out there laying in the snow with his belly up. Come on, buddy, you can do it.
Look at you.
Oh, yeah. He's a good boy. Wow. And he'll come up and give me a head rub. That's his way of saying thank you and hello.
Oh.
Hi, buddy. Hi, buddy. He's a good lion. Oh, you're going to be that lazy today? Are you going to be that lazy? Merlin came to us from the Kirby Van Birch Magic Show. Here you go, bud. Right here. Pay attention. Here it comes. Here it comes. Here it comes. Look, buddy.
Hey,
look, buddy.
Right there.
Merlin. Merlin.
You smell it?
Right there. There you go.
You get it?
There you go. Okay, next piece. He actually, from the time he was 4 months old till the time he was 5 years old, he lived indoors backstage at the Kirby Van Birch Show. Here you go, bud. Merlin, pay attention. Right here.
Here's another piece.
Here you go.
You think it's a thigh?
There you go.
There you go.
Oh. He gets a little possessive over stuff. Here you go. Push it back down in there again.
Oh, no one's going to take it from you. Don't worry.
That's a good bark. That was a good bark, buddy. You can see on the end of his nose, he's got what we call cage burn or cage rub. That's because he was in too small of an enclosure for too long with not enough to do, and they end up wearing the skin off of their nose. He's also been declawed, which is a bad thing. What they do is they'll remove the first finger bone in their fingers, and when that happens, they often get a tendectomy. You go, buddy. One more piece. One more piece. Which forces them to walk unnaturally. Normally the big cats will walk up on their tiptoes on those front pads on their paws. When they get declawed, they end up walking flat-footed on the large pads, and that leads to early arthritis, hip problems, shoulder problems, spinal problems. Teeth. He thinks it's all about him. That's why he's got this nice central location here. He gets jealous if people go see other tigers, and that's why we had to put up that blind fence right there, because he, make sure he gets pieces just like the one that you gave him before. Yeah, the boneless pieces. He had surgery a couple of years ago, and since then he hasn't been able to handle bones really well. Here you go, buddy. It's coming. It's coming. He had an anaerobic gram-stain negative. Yeah, he did. Bacterial infection, which he had a mass in his airway. He was dying on us. We had to take him up to Mizzou to get an 8-hour thoracotomy, basically. They cut him from here all the way down to his belly. They cut through his chest bone, opened him completely up to where you could see his heart and his lungs and everything. But they did remove a mass about this long and about that big around out of his airway. So that saved his life. We got that operation half price. It only cost us $25,000 to keep TJ alive here. There you go, buddy. TIGERS. I tell everybody we have one kind of trainer here, and they all have 4 legs.
So it's just kind of like your animals at home. So
it's Max, his brother. We'll put this right up to put one in there. There you go, buddy. You'll hear a crunch, crunch. Gulp.
Got it. He's eating.
Nope. They're whole animal eaters in the wild. They will,
He says, I want some now.
Here you go, buddy. Here it comes. They'll eat everything. Bones, everything except for the intestines and a couple of organs. But they'll crush that skull up of the animal they killed, and they'll eat every part of the animal.
Are you ready?
There you go, buddy. There you go, buddy. more piece for Maxie.
I'm sorry.
We always encourage people to pay close attention to the tigers, so when you come back, like if you ever go to any other sanctuary, try and make sure they have the same cats there year after year, because if they don't, something's going on. Moo, come on, let's get a snack. Come on, buddy.
But within their ranks, a drama plays out. Two hyena cubs, born in rival territories, struggle to survive as their clans wage war. In this volatile world, will two new lives endure? The battles of the Bone Crusher Queens. The Lua Plain, flat, dry, merciless. Temperatures soar and water is scarce. When the rains come, a wildebeest migration will flood into Lua Plain, but for now, only a few hardy adults stir the dust. Yet in this barren landscape, one of Africa's most underestimated predators has risen to greatness: the spotted hyena. Spotted hyenas are extraordinary survivors. Their powerful jaws crush through bone, and their cast-iron stomachs digest even rotting meat. Yet in many regions, these bone crushers hunt far more often than they scavenge. Female spotted hyenas are remarkable amongst mammals. They are larger, stronger, and fiercer than male hyenas. And they have the most male-like sexual organs of any female mammal. This bizarrely elongated organ was once thought to be a product of high testosterone levels in the womb, but today it continues to mystify scientists. The female hyenas govern the clans, led by all-powerful matriarchs. Neighboring clans are sworn enemies, and territorial trespassers are often viciously attacked. This story begins in Zambia, in the Lua Plain National Park, where spotted hyenas reign as the top predators. In the heart of the park is a thriving hyena clan. The clan's leader, the matriarch, lures her youngest cub from a burrow. It's a tiny female named Nasanta, and today the little cub meets her clan for the first time. For 2 weeks, the newborn lay hidden in a burrow away from this main den. But now she is old enough to join the clan. Nasanta raises her leg in the typical hyena greeting, allowing her clanmates to identify her distinctive scent. The clan will recognize her by this smell, and she in turn must learn to recognize theirs. It's an important learning curve, since each hyena has its own rank, and Nasanta needs to know who's who as she finds her place in the clan. Fortunately, when it comes to rank, Nasanta has a head start. She and her twin sister get more than just milk from their mother. As cubs, they also inherit her superior status. As the matriarch, their mother ranks highest in the clan and enjoys the support and protection of all of the clan's dominant females. Nobody dares to confront her or her cubs. But not all hyenas live such charmed lives. 4 kilometers to the southwest is another clan, Nasanta's clan's greatest rival, This clan abounds with cubs. Most are the offspring of the high-ranking females, but one among them is different. His name is Twambo, and he is the son of a low-ranking female. Like Nasanta, Twambo inherits his mother's rank, but this time, it's not a blessing. Low-ranking hyenas are often bullied by the clan, and with his mother's rank, Twambo will be a target. His mother will care for him, but she won't dare to defend him from the more dominant females, or their cubs. Behind her lies Twambo's father. He's the alpha male, the top-ranking male in the clan. But all spotted hyena males are subordinate to the females. He ranks even lower than Twambo's mother. Twambo will get little support from his low-ranking parents. He'll have to face his clanmates alone. But for now, it's all good fun. At only a few weeks old, the cubs are more concerned with play than rank. For Twambo, the worst is yet to come. Twambo and Nasanta's home on the Lua Plain has a catastrophic history. For more than 100 years, the Lozi people have lived in the Lua Plain National Park amongst the wildlife, conserving and protecting it by order of the Lozi King. But a decade ago, around the turn of the 21st century, everything changed. A scourge of poachers invaded Lua Plain. Weapons streamed in from war-torn Angola, and a massacre was unleashed. Lions were targeted for their valuable skins, the herds for their meat. Death swept across the plains. Thousands were slaughtered. Lua's wildlife populations were devastated. By 2003, the hyena's gravest enemies, lions, were all but obliterated. Only one known lioness survived, probably the last of her species in the region. But the poachers spared the spotted hyena. With its blotchy coat, it made a poor trophy, and its meat was worthless as food. With the threat of lions eliminated, the spotted hyena came to dominate the Lua Plain. But life in Lua today still has its challenges. The last weeks of the dry season are excruciatingly hot. The landscape distorts behind a haze of heat. But today, Twambo's mother senses a change. A wind has picked up, carrying with it the promise of relief. A storm approaches. The wildebeest bulls revel in the anticipation of rain. But this storm harbors a deadly threat. Fire. Flames tear through the dry grassland at terrifying speed, heading straight for Twambo and Nasanta's dens. The cubs are too small to outrun the blaze. If the fire reaches the den, they could suffocate in the heat and smoke. A new dawn brings the dying flames of the inferno. The blaze scorched the land around Nasanta's den before the wind turned it away. The cubs are safe, but they look out on a desolate landscape. As the last embers burn to dust, the promised rain arrives at last. The cool downpour provides long-awaited relief from the heat and brings about a spectacular phenomenon on the plain. A few days after the fire, a carpet of pink lilies sprouts across the plains. Triggered by chemicals in the smoke from the fire, the beautiful bloom lasts only a few weeks. In the meantime, Nasanta's mother, the matriarch, needs to find food. The matriarch heads north, where the first herds of the migration begin to gather, leaving young Nasanta untended at the den. Spotted hyena milk is so rich that Nasanta can survive without suckling for days at a time, so the matriarch can afford to venture far from the den in search of food. At last, she spots a telltale sign of a potential meal. Vultures. Her suspicions are soon confirmed. A wildebeest bull lies injured in the grass. The matriarch is the first hyena on the scene, but she is not the only predator. This bull is the victim of the last lioness in Lua Plain. The matriarch tries to move in on the bull, but she's unnerved by the lioness. A conflict with a big cat could be fatal. The hyena keeps her distance as the bull quietly dies, not willing to provoke a conflict while the lioness remains nearby. The circling silhouettes of the vultures can be seen from far and wide, guiding the matriarch's clanmates to the kill. In the darkness, the hyenas feast at last. At daybreak, Nasanta's mother and her clanmates return to their den. The matriarch rouses the cubs. Nasanta is larger now, and lighter fur marks her face and neck. The adults have returned with meat, a rare luxury for hyena cubs. It's the highest-ranking cubs that commandeer the scrap. Nasanta is lost to the feast, but she fights for her share. The other top-ranking cubs are stiff competition, and they won't let lower-ranking cubs anywhere near this scrap. As an adult, Nasanta will have to contend with highly competitive clanmates at kills. She must learn to eat fast or lose out, since a clan can reduce a carcass to scraps in less than 20 minutes. She will still suckle her mother's rich milk for about a year, but this new taste for meat is the beginning of Nasanta's transformation into a deadly and efficient predator. The Lua Plain is undergoing an extraordinary metamorphosis. In the coming days, the rains fall in an almost continuous deluge. The beginning of an annual flood that will cover much of the plains in water. Dusty depressions become waterlogged marshes. And life floods into the plains. At last, the migration arrives. Just in time for the bountiful wet season, over 35,000 wildebeest descend on the plains, the culmination of the second largest wildebeest migration on Earth. Most of the cows are pregnant, and in the next few weeks, all of them will give birth. The calves make easy prey, but the sheer number of them ensures that many will survive to adulthood. For the hyenas, the time of plenty has begun. Meanwhile, at the den to the north, Nasanta is finding her place in the clan. She marks the grass around the den with a distinctive scented paste from glands beneath her tail. The adults use this pasting to mark their territory. For Nasanta, it's part of the process of establishing her rank. She is quickly learning to exert the status she inherited from her mother. This male flattens his ears behind his head as she approaches him, showing his submission to her. Nasanta lifts her leg in the typical hyena greeting, allowing him to recognize her distinctive scent. Most of the adult males here are immigrants from other clans who joined Nasanta's clan to find a mate. They forfeited the rank they inherited from their mothers when they left their own clans, falling instantly to the bottom of the hyena hierarchy. Despite Nasanta's age and tiny size, this male and all the other adult immigrant males in her clan are subordinate to her. The tiny cub holds such sway because her mother backs her up. The matriarch often comes to Nasanta's defense, attacking low-ranking hyenas to reinforce her tiny cub status. The male is now in a precarious position. He must show absolute submission if he is to avoid an attack. Nasanta follows her mother's example, sniffing the male's genitalia. He bows and bobs his head to show his subservience. But the clan females are not convinced. They join the interrogation. Fearlessly, Nasanta stays in the thick of the fray. The other cubs are jumpy, but Nasanta seems fearless. With the protection of the matriarch and the clan females, no hyena would dare to hurt Nasanta. 4 kilometers to the southwest, Twambo is not faring quite as well. He's also growing up fast, with the first spots showing through his black coat. But unlike most of the other cubs, Twambo is a loner. As the cubs get older, they become more aware of each other's ranks. The higher-ranking cubs have built bonds with each other, forming relationships they will carry into adulthood. But Twambo has few allies in the clan. When the other cubs do take an interest in him, it's usually to beat him up. The older the cubs get, the more they pick on little Twambo. And unlike Nasanta, Twambo will get no help from his mother. He must fight his battles alone. In the meantime, Twambo's mother has other things in mind. It's time to leave the cubs to hunt. There are many mouths to feed. The clan needs a big kill. Tonight, the hyenas will hunt as a pack. The search for prey takes Twambo's clan dangerously close to rival territory. They are right on the border of Nasanta's clan's hunting ground. Clans are viciously territorial. If they're discovered, a conflict could break out, but it's a risk they are willing to take. They isolate a small herd of wildebeest, seeking out the most vulnerable targets. The clan charges the herd. A cow bolts in panic. A calf is separated from the herd. Both mother and calf fall to the deadly pack. But despite their success, the clan's proximity to rival territory makes them nervous. A violent clash with Nasanta's clan could end in serious injuries.
This show was created for you and your family to watch together. Welcome to Nat Geo Wild.
They eat feverishly, dismembering the carcasses in minutes. The powerful jaws crush down with almost half a ton of force, tearing through bone and flesh with ease. Despite the feeding frenzy, the hyenas are anxious to avoid being discovered by their rivals. They try to drag the kills back into their own territory before they are spotted. The move comes too late. A territorial patrol from Nasanta's clan has come to investigate. The scouts approach with caution as the intruding clan braces for a fight. Tensions are high on both fronts. A few scouts try to approach the kill, but the intruders chase them off. The scouts are grossly outnumbered. They won't win this fight alone, so they retreat. But this battle isn't over yet. The scouts will return with reinforcements. As dawn breaks, Twambo's clan continues its feast. Lulled into false security, they hold their position, still precariously close to enemy territory. By mid-morning, the dregs of the kill are left to the lowest-ranking hyenas of Twambo's clan, who saw little of the lavish feast during the night. But they have overstayed their welcome. The scouts from Nasanta's clan have returned with reinforcements. This territorial infringement will not be taken lightly. The intruders recognize the danger too late. The full force of Nasanta's clan is upon them. Twambo's father, the intruding clan's alpha male, is in trouble. A large female from Nasanta's clan is close on his tail. He is cornered. The fierce females show him no mercy. They target his spine and ears. This is a fight for his life. As dusk falls, the battered members of Twambo's clan return to the den. Many are wounded, but only one is missing: Twambo's father. Weeks pass before he finally appears, limping and disfigured, but alive. His wounds have healed, but they will mark him for life. His ear has been ripped from his head. But the alpha male's injuries are not the worst of the fight. At Nasanta's den to the north, a male hyena's wounds reflect the true horror of the conflict. His nose and lips have been ripped from his face, healing into a permanent snarl. Next to humans, hyenas are probably one of the most fatally aggressive animals on Earth. One day, Twambo will have to breach this deadly territorial rivalry when he leaves to find a mate in a new clan. In the weeks following the clan war, the rains continue to fall in a ceaseless torrent. Rising waters swallow vast tracts of land. There is little dry ground, a blessing for the birds, but a curse for the herds that must wade through shoulder-high water. The flooding encroaches fast on Twambo's den. The adult hyenas seem to enjoy the quagmire, using it as a pantry in which to store scraps for future meals. But the cubs cannot swim as well as their parents. If the waters reach the den, they could drown. For now, the den is still dry, and Twambo and his clanmates are safe. Twambo is starting to look more like the adult hyenas. His once black coat is now a spotty mane of brown fur, and he has more than doubled in size. But his low rank remains a problem. Even the smallest cubs still actively pick on him. Fortunately, he's also becoming more independent and can escape his belligerent clanmates as he explores ever further from the den. But as adulthood draws near, the toughest part of his life approaches. Soon, instinct will compel him to leave in search of a mate from another clan. If he's not killed for intruding on rival territory, he'll have to struggle for acceptance into a new clan. What little rank he has will be stripped away, and like the adult males of his own clan, he'll become submissive to the clan females. Unprovoked attacks and exclusion from kills will become commonplace. It's a hard life, but life without a clan is harder. Alone, he may struggle for food. His ability to draw nutrition from even the oldest bones may become a matter of survival. At the clan to the north, Nasanta and her sister will not suffer this fate. As high-ranking females, they will never want for food. In fact, unlike Twambo, they will often be the first to feed at kills. Much of the land around Nasanta's den is dry, and the matriarch guides the cubs through their future hunting grounds. Soon, they will even be allowed to join their mother on a hunt. At nightfall, the rains begin anew. Catfish squirm through the flooded Lua Plain as the waters rise ever higher. If the flood reaches Twambo's den, it could change everything for his clan. The downpour continues into the morning. A female from Twambo's clan returns to the den, but her clanmates are gone. The burrows lie empty. The waters have crept within meters of the den. They are dangerously high. The cubs lack the size and strength to swim to safety and could easily drown in the deep waters. Cut off from dry land, the den could become a death trap. The matriarch must have let the waters reach the den, but this female has been left behind. She will have to search for the clan on higher ground, or try to survive without them. Was Twambo with the other cubs when they left? Or has he too been abandoned in the flood, left to search the territory for remnants of his clan? Years pass, and the fates of Twambo and his clan remain uncertain. Dry seasons come and go, and each year the plains flood anew. Nasanta continues to flourish as she grows into a high-ranking adult. But today, something unexpected happens. A stranger appears. A hyena foreign to Nasanta's clan. It's Twambo. He survived the floods and has grown to adulthood. He's on his own now, searching for a mate and a new clan. He's been drawn here by the scent of a female in season. That female is Nasanta, and Twambo gets her attention. He's an intruder in her territory, but she doesn't attack him. She'd rather claim him as a mate. New genes in the clan are a valuable asset, and nomadic males are often favored as mates over resident males. With Nasanta's approval, Twambo's intrusion is allowed by the clan, for now. But there is one hyena that disapproves of the match. He is a high-ranking male from Nasanta's clan, and his hopes for mating with Nasanta have been dashed for now by Twambo's unexpected appearance. The pair retreat to avoid a conflict, but the scorned male follows them, intent on challenging Twambo for mating rights. A long-distance chase begins. In the blistering midday heat, Twambo and Nasanta try to outrun their pursuer. But the male hyena won't give up. After a marathon chase, Twambo and Nasanta mate at last. But in seconds, the competing male catches up. He's still desperate to mate, but he will have to get past Twambo first. Mating is no simple task for spotted hyenas. Because of Nasanta's male-like genitalia, it takes much maneuvering for Twambo to cover her successfully. Without her consent, no male can force her to mate. But that doesn't stop the scorned male from trying. He attempts to mount Nasanta from behind Twambo. At last, the male accepts defeat, leaving Twambo and Nasanta to complete their courtship in peace. But when the mating ends, so too does the clan's tolerance for Twambo. He must still gain acceptance into Nasanta's clan. The next day, Twambo approaches Nasanta's den to attempt to gain acceptance. The dominant females immediately investigate the stranger. Twambo flattens his ears and bows his head to show his submission. But it's not enough for them. He's still a member of a rival clan, and they will attack him if he does not show complete submission. In order to gain acceptance into the clan, Twambo must also win the favor of the matriarch, Nasanta's mother. She is nursing a new litter of cubs, and she'll protect them at all costs, especially from strangers like Twambo. Twambo keeps his head low, showing absolute deference. The tactic works. The matriarch relents. Finally, she allows him to greet her by sniffing beneath her hind leg. He does the same to her cubs, who will rank above him in this clan. At last, he is allowed to lie down only meters from the matriarch. It seems that Twambo has been accepted into Nasanta's clan. Now, it is Nasanta that must face her toughest challenge yet. Over the next 4 months, her pregnancy comes to term. At last, the moment arrives. She sits at the entrance to a solitary burrow, where only days before, she survived an excruciating birth. Because of her unusual male-like genitalia, a female spotted hyena's first... is always extraordinarily painful. Stillbirths are common, but Nasanta's one tiny female cub survived. Like her parents, Twambo and Nasanta, this cub will have to endure life on the Lua Plain. She'll be spared from a life of bullying like Twambo's because she'll inherit Nasanta's high rank. But she'll still have to survive desperate drought, torrential flooding, natural disasters, and vicious rivalries with other clans. She'll have to learn what it takes to become a bone crusher queen.
The tiger, iconic symbol of the wild, and an apex predator that we fear and admire. In our imaginations, they roam the jungle. But today, many tigers have never even seen the wild. The vast majority of them spend their lives in captivity. Princess is an American tiger, a distant relative of her wild ancestors. She doesn't even know how to hunt. Most tigers in America aren't found in zoos. They're privately owned. There are more than twice as many of them as the highly endangered wild tiger. This could change if new legislation is passed that would ban the private ownership and breeding of tigers. What are the issues surrounding captive tigers in America? And what does the future hold for their wild cousins? Tigers are one of the world's most popular animals. Everybody loves to see a tiger at the zoo. Even the scientists who work around them are impressed by their majesty. Ron Tilson is the senior conservation advisor at the Minnesota Zoo and a renowned expert on tigers. He spent many years tracking and studying them in the jungles of Asia.
My heart beats faster every time I see one. Yeah, there is, it's because they represent everything. They are the icon of Asian wilderness. They are the most powerful cat, the largest cat. They are, in my opinion, one of the most attractive cats. But it's also the fact that essentially we have evolved as a species with the tiger, and the tiger is one of the only animals on Earth that preys and eats people. And when a tiger looks at a human being, I think the tiger sees us for exactly what we are. We are nothing more than a piece of meat.
The tiger and the power it represents has always fascinated us. At the beginning of the 20th century, there were 100,000 tigers in the forests of Asia. The first tigers came to America as entertainers. Before zoos and circuses attempted to control their breeding, surplus animals found their way into private hands. Soon, everyone from the rich and famous to companies and sports teams wanted a piece of the big cat. For some Americans, like the character of Tony Montana in the movie Scarface, owning a tiger became a symbol of success. Martin Dins is a celebrity veterinarian and was one of the first to specialize in exotic animals. His talent and reputation led him to work for A-list stars like Michael Jackson and the magicians Siegfried and Roy. He witnessed firsthand the rise of the tiger population in America.
The tiger pet phenomenon became a trend, I would say, in the early 60s. We could be driving in Beverly Hills and see a person driving a convertible with a tiger sitting up in the back seat. Or people owning a Jaguar, a big Jaguar, driving around in their Jaguar with it. There were no import restrictions. There were no restrictions on the sale out of a pet shop of these kind of animals. You know, a little tiger cub is nice and cute, so people thought it would be fashionable. It was unique. They could show it off, and it was trendy then.
The pet tiger phenomenon may have existed briefly in other parts of the world, but it never had the dimensions it's taken on in America. In the 1970s, actress Tippi Hedren, the star of Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, embarked on an unusual film project. She starred in the movie Roar, where actors and crew members rubbed shoulders with dozens of lions and tigers.
I can't believe we did all that we were foolish enough to do it. So many of us were hurt. You know, that it was, insanity. It was truly insane here.
Tippi Hedren radically changed. She converted the Roar movie set into the Shambhala Preserve, a sanctuary for abused and neglected big cats. Her strong stance against private ownership has drawn attention to the issues facing captive and wild big cats. In the wild, tigers are threatened by habitat destruction and human encroachment. They've been hunted and poached for their skins. Most of all, they suffered from the illegal trade of their parts for use in traditional medicine. 97% of the species have been wiped out over the last 100 years. And with only 3,200 wild tigers left, they are facing a total crisis.
Well, just about everything has been tried, and just about everything has failed. Everyone is trying to think through how to go about making a future for tigers, and the bottom line is that we've failed in every example. There is no one place you can put your finger and say, aha, here's the magic formula on how to save tigers.
Tigers have been on the endangered species list since it was established. In 1973, it became illegal to import tigers born in the wild. So the tigers living in the United States today are American, born and raised. The population of captive tigers has been steadily growing. In the wild, a female spends a couple of years teaching her 3 or 4 cubs how to hunt and fend for themselves. But in captivity, she can breed every year. Today, most American tigers are privately owned, and some people still keep them as pets. Susanna Kukol and Scott Shoemaker live in the small town of Pahrump, Nevada, with their 6 tigers.
Hi, baby. I know. Mama's girl, huh?
If your definition of pet is something you throw food at and it's nice and docile, okay, then that's not a tiger.
That's my girl. There's my girl. Oh, that's my girl. In the cage, it's just fun. Outside, that's when it's like, okay, we are going for the walk, we are gonna go for the training. So outside is like you are in school. In the cage, it's, okay, it's their place, it's their home. Oh, somebody's being cute. So basically, that's the golden rule. You don't push them into any serious training in the cage, and you never ever turn the back on a tiger.
But not all captive tigers are pets or collector's items. Some private owners see themselves as conservationists and believe America is the tiger's Noah's Ark. Patty Perry runs her own Center for Conservation and Education in Southern California. She is also the vice president of the Feline Conservation Federation, the largest organization promoting private ownership and breeding of captive exotic cats in the United States.
It's far from perfect, but in our world today, we have to have captive breeders, private captive breeders. We have to have private educators, because the zoos can't do it all. You don't get that kind of contact and that kind of one-on-one at a zoo. They have been poached, they have been hunted for their pelts and for their internal organs, and we have very, very low populations. This is Prana, the standard. The snow white is Vishnu. This is my little red-headed stepchild, and this is the one, the golden tabby. He's going to be our biggest tiger here. The tigers is very much an emotional bond. They respond emotionally. I got them all as babies, so I bottle raised them. So there is that connection. You know, they identify me as, you know, mom with the milk. Who wants to feed a tiger? I'll kind of start on this end and give you guys a chance. I want you to hold the stick. Just hold the stick and put it right through there. Want to have a bite? Okay. Who's next? These cats being 6 generations, you know, captive bred, and their, you know, their primary contact being human beings are not going to be the same as a cat that's in the wild. It's a completely different animal. But will they ever be domesticated? No. They're wild animals.
The wild nature of tigers is seen even among those in captivity. In 2003, famous Las Vegas entertainer Roy Horn was mauled during a performance by one of his beloved tigers.
The tiger just grabs him, like, let's be right around here in this area, grabs him, like, just locks on him, picks him up, and just drags him.
We just heard all this commotion behind the curtain, and you could hear.
It reminded everyone that even trained tigers are unpredictable and dangerous.
For 40 years, those guys did 2 to 3 shows a day. In the beginning, 7 days a week. That's a lot of exposure to a tiger. If you fall down in front of one of these big cats, and especially with tigers, they're gonna carry you off, regardless of what your relationship is with them.
He's got a thing for me, Patty.
I know, he does.
In my career as a zoological veterinarian, I've worked the gamut of facilities and owners that have tigers. There's the zoos, there's the circuses, there's the private collectors. And years ago, there were a lot more of the illicit owners of these animals. But I've worked for all of them, and I don't discriminate. I have done the best I can to discourage breeding by unqualified individuals. But I took an oath, and is it my business to say, no, I'm not going to treat this tiger because you own it privately? That's on the other side of medicine for me.
Lisa Ann Takansnick is an attorney in Washington, D.C. Her organization, the Wildcat Conservation Legal Aid Society, is trying to determine the exact number of privately owned tigers.
Hey, I'm calling to follow up with you on the tiger research. You were going to finalize some of the numbers for which state are you still working on? What are we looking at? Alabama?
The actual number of tigers in the United States is still a matter of speculation. But the enforcement of laws already in place is problematic. Legislation varies from state to state. At the federal level, the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Interior both enforce different laws affecting tigers. There is no single government body responsible for tiger welfare.
Well, we don't really know how many tigers are held captive in the United States. It's a very